Wham, wow. Something only a comic book publisher gets to say. But I want to give a deep zam, wham, wow to the state of Vermont and to Dean Kuchar for showing the visuals and to Bayani for being the interpreter for the deaf community. Comic books, as you all know, are not like regular books. Open one and get whisked into the Marvel universe, the DC one, or straight to Riverdale, Archie Comics. Yes, the Riverdale TV show is part of Archie Comics. Archie Comics was started in 1941 by two families, Goldwaters and Silberkleits. At that time, there was not much out there for the 8-year-old girl, comic books that was, blowing things up. It was a very male-dominated thing. So the Goldwaters and Silberkleits felt there was a need to have a comic book for that young 8-year-old girl. So they thought about romance and thinking about an all-American young man who could have one girl on one side who was very different from the other girl on the other side, Betty and Veronica. And that's how it all started. But Archie Comics is very much loved by everyone. So although it was started out with the thought of the 8-year-old girl, Archie Comics is for everyone. And there is a formula. And the formula, it reflects the decade. Place a few teens in a high school, Riverdale High, and put in a little bit of chaos or reflect topics of the decade and let the teens work it out without any adult intervention. Did you ever look at it that way? But that was the formula. I recently created a new character. We created a new character. Her name is Scarlett Salty. And she is a teen who is talented in creating things and ideas. And Scarlett also is very passionate about the shoes she wears. You will always see Scarlett with flowers on her shoes. Scarlett also desires friendships. Friendships are everything to her. But Scarlett's social cues have difficult in, communicating that. Scarlett is autistic. So, Scarlett reflects one of the conversations we hear much about in this decade, autism. But this project was not just started due to media coverage on autism. My background was in teaching. And teaching all types of students, including those who think autistically. Education is a big part of my background. What comes with that is being skilled in how we engage minds into learning. So, how did I come into Archie Comics like Miss Grundy? I had married into the Archie Comics kingdom around 1990. And I'd like to add that comics were not part of my world. Hard to believe, the name Archie Comics had never been on my radar, not even as an 8-year-old girl. Unfortunately, I had never read for entertainment. Teaching was my thing, reading, research material to teach. I taught in a public school for 25 years. At that time, with 25 years of teaching under my belt, my husband's business partner, Richard Goldwater, had passed away. And then another shock. 7 months later, my dear husband, Michael I. Silberkleit, passed away. There was no longer anyone at the Archie Comics helm. Not to say that my heart was very broken. So what did I do about 11 years ago? I stepped out of the classroom and into the Archie boardroom. As I said, 11 years ago, not so long ago. The bar was set high when I came in, at least. That's how I looked at it. At that time, I thought the Archie bar was way over my head. Not only was I the first female executive to walk through the Archie doors, I was walking into a family business. I was holding on to Betty Cooper, for dear life. This picture was taken for a story that raised a lot of eyebrows. It was the business magazine Fortune that was interested in how can a school teacher go into business. The title, Accidental Boss. The article emphasized I had no business experience, nor did I hold an MBA. I say we are human first. Whether we have a business degree, are deaf, are blind, have ADHD, dyslexia, autistic, Down syndrome, or however our bodies, our minds, experiences present themselves, we are human first. But we know that humans can be very judgmental. I say that picture was kind of the last snapshot of really who the true Nancy was. But, I had to start, dressing up in my Archie orange, start putting lipstick on, looking, a little bit more professional. So, with that article and being tagged accidental boss and being in a family business, I was being challenged. However, my dedication in life is to engage one into learning. Teach creatively runs deep. As I said, I had never been exposed to comics. That's a whole nother story, a wonderful story. But now I was being touched by comics, and the comics were piled high on my desk, and I saw their value. Comic books are not only great entertainment, but I see as a tool to help communicate information that may be hard to approach, such as autism, environmental issues, kindness, inclusion. Going back to Scarlett, I felt if a person, a teacher, or a parent wants to bring up autism, what better way than to start the conversation with a comic? And the Scarlett stories are not found in your digest or the comic books or, online. You have to connect with me. They're available digitally, because Scarlett is serious about her messaging. She is seeking kindness ambassadors to pass her message along that autism is just one small part of her. There's many parts to all of us. And Scarlett tries to remind everyone to have patience and be inclusive and get to know who the person is. So comic books today are more essential than ever. Not only young children, but adults need and require downtime, time to imagine. The panels with their inky black lines, vibrant colors, engages the reader to expand the story, allows one to figure things out, to be in control. Reading comic books is what I feel everyone needs today. Comic books plus comic book stores equals community, enjoyment, critical thinking, cosplay, and recharging one's batteries. Comic books are not like regular books. As I said, open one and get whisked into their universe. Comic books are good therapy. We all need an outlet for us to deal with quarantine, emotions, anxiety, fostering resilience during this pandemic time. Think about adding comics to your reading list. Here at Winhall Library in Vermont, there are free digital books and comic books under a platform called Hoopla. Contact your librarian, Dawn. And if you're not connected with Winhall, contact your librarian and they will show you how to get onto Hoopla and click on the free comic books and other books. With my platform to utilize comics to foster that love of reading, to spark conversation on topics that are dry or difficult to approach, or in a greater way, maybe place a smile on someone's face. Also, being the co-CEO of Archie Comics, I have learned to shine a light on your dreams, your desires, and goals, and just do it. I tell everyone, just do it. You will face boulders, but keep going. Never, this is one of my quotes, and it came just into my heart, and I gift it to you. Never question if you can. Only question, why would you ever think you cannot? And for the educators, I hope we have educators out there listening. Think about those lesson plans. Create plans as one of your top 10 hits. Pack it with not one academic subject, but many. Utilize comics, their visual literacy, their rich visual literacy. You are not only immersed in a literary experience, you can choose a comic book story that leads into science, social issues, history, current events, and let's not forget, teaching the English language. Reading comic books is a positive approach. Develops analytical and critical thinking, learning about values of life There's so many of those Archie stories where they've been life learned messages. Prompts one to think deeply. Using comics as a learning tool is an approach that's interesting, easy to understand, has quick results, offers intimacy with characters, creative freedom, focusing on key points, alternate ways to set up lessons, and visual concepts, identifying with the hero, and raise the interest of reluctant readers. That's a story. I was one of them, but I can come back and talk about that story one day. They're also motivating and they gain attention. All of this, to my educators, can be used as a strategy in teaching and in a variety of school subjects. Same to our parents out there. Many of us now are finding ourselves teaching at home. So the next time you all see a superhero movie, remember, comics are more than just getting the bad guy. Comics are a powerful resource for conveying information, engaging one into that love of learning. So I'm going to stop here. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, but Dawn will let me know if we have time, because in this wonderful digest, it can be found on Hoopla for free. It's Archie's Fun House Spring Annual, Archie Library 26. There are so many stories that I believe could be used in the classroom for a variety of topics. But there's one here with a social message, because as Scarlett Saltee says, inclusion, kindness is very important. And I have found many Archie stories I have come across that give that same message. So if you were going to talk about kindness and inclusion, sometimes people's interest goes down. But if you said, hey, I'd like to read a story called Trendsetter, I think we could spark the conversation. So Dawn, do I have time to read Trendsetter to your audience? It is a 5-page story.
I think we have about 12 minutes left, so I think you'd have plenty of time.
Okay, and there will be a link to how people can get in touch with me. So let's start off, and you can read along in the pictures. So Trendsetter, and here's Archie in a store. These are our latest line of hats. We call it Doing Your Own Thing Headwear. Far out, man. I'll take this one. And if you don't have to wrap it out. I'll wear it home. I've always wanted to buy something like this, but I never had the nerve. But today, I'm going to do my own thing. Watch out, world. Here I come. I'm sure if I feel good in it, I will look good to everyone else too. It's a simple matter of believing in yourself. And I happen to think I look great. Hey, Archie, where'd you get that silly looking hat? No, Dexter, the circus is not in town. And don't point at the man. It's not polite. He must have gotten dressed in the dark. Hey, Archie, what are you doing with that crazy hat on? Did you lose a bet? Maybe he's wearing it for some kind of initiation for a school fraternity. Nobody will ever ask him to remove that hat in a movie. It's funnier than any movie. I refuse to be upset. I don't hear a thing. They are all jealous because they don't have a hat like this. There's always some joker around when you're a fashion trendsetter. Hey, Archie, have you been invited to some costume party we don't know about? No, I'm just doing my own thing. Well, you're sure to win first prize because that's really funny. What do they know about the latest fashions? I'll go over and show Betty. She has good taste. At least she'll give me an honest answer, an opinion, and not be insulting like those other clowns. Ring! And to my audience and everyone in the Winhall community, I'm not going to read page 5. I encourage you all to imagine, expand the story. How do you think it ended? I was quite shocked. I thought I knew how it ended because I know Betty Cooper's personality, her character, really well. But our talented writers and artists really threw me for a loop. So I encourage you to go speak to Dawn, click on Hoopla, and read all of Archie's Funhouse Spring Annual number 26, and then you can go to Trendsetter to see how it ended. So I hate to leave you with a cliffhanger, but I've enjoyed my time. And if you'd like to connect with me, find me on Instagram, and we can put that up, or my email is nancy.archiecomics@gmail.com. Dawn, can we share the screen so they can all see my contact that Mr. Dean Kuchar has for us?
I got it.
I find that sometimes the visual is helpful. So Dean's going to find the last one. And so you can find me at Instagram at Nancy Silberkleit, or to email me, nancy.archiecomics@gmail.com. So it was a pleasure. And if there's any questions in the chat, we may have a minute or two for me to answer.
Hi, Nancy. I'll ask a question since no one's asked a question. Who is your favorite character?
I love that question because you may not believe it, but Mr. Lodge. I admire the stories of Mr. Lodge because he's a business person, and I like getting my ideas and my strength in business just from watching him, and how he would be kind of serious, and I told you that happy-go-lucky look where I was holding on to Betty for dear life. I see, Mr. Lodge looks very confident, so I started looking very confident just from being inspired by him.
I have a comment here from David. It says, "Thank you to Archie Comics for its inclusiveness and representation of the real world. As a gay person, I appreciate the character of Kevin Keller."
Well, when I came into Archie Comics, that was one thing that was on my list. Let's be relevant. Let's reflect who represents our schools. So I thank David for recognizing that. And, as I said, Archie Comics has a formula. And part of the formula is, reflecting, the decade, the conversation. And I'm just so proud that Archie Comics is now going into its 80th year. So David, thank you for recognizing that.
I'm not sure if we have any other questions. Anyone else want to ask a question? Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Nancy, for doing this presentation. I'm very excited that we got to offer this to our patrons, and we'll be sharing this on our website, and we'll actually be sharing this on our local community and media station. So look for that as well on GNAT-TV. So
Wonderful. I am very happy to hear that. So Dawn, thank you for that extra platform. And reach out to everyone to let them know about Hoopla. Hoopla's new for Winhall Public Library. So there's a lot of books and also comic books on that platform.
Nancy, I actually have another question from Sherry. She asked, I'm curious why you chose a story from the 70s.
Well, this is a story that a digest that just happens to be on Hoopla that is filled with many stories that can be used in the classroom. The first one is On the Road Again to the Philippines. I was in the Philippines not so long ago, and I was supposed to be there again in August, but the pandemic had me do the Zoom talk. But this gave the opportunity to do a map lesson, a cultural lesson. Just, if we're going to talk about, culture in other countries, the kids may not be so interested. But if you say, oh, we're going to read this story, then you have sparked some interest, and it had the Philippines. Another story in here showed someone in Indian garb. And then the last story happens to be inspired by me. I did not write it, but Baton Lash, one of our writers who passed away not so long ago, happens to be, I think, his birthday yesterday or maybe today. I was so proud he wrote this story, Getting Drastic with Plastic. I wanted to talk about how the country Rwanda got rid of plastic bags as a country. They were the first people on our planet that, shined the light on this issue. So I went over to Rwanda, gathered the information. So lo and behold, I'm talking about today Scarlet and Kindness and Inclusion. That story, Trendsetter, which touches upon inclusion, blocking out that negative noise. I've told you, I deeply understand, when one is, challenged, and it can be tough out there. People can be very judgmental. So Archie did what I'd like people to do: block out that negative noise and go for it. So Sherry, the reason I chose that story, it just happened to find its way into this wonderful digest that I feel is a treasure to be in a classroom. So tell teachers about it. And it's free at the library on Hoopla.
So Nancy, I just have a couple other comments. Fred said, brilliant, thank you. David Field said, thank you. This was a fun presentation, and I'm not local, so a silver lining of the pandemic was getting to view this via Zoom. And then we have from Fred Feetham, he says, regards from Greece, looking forward to hosting you soon, Fred.
Yes, I know Fred. He had invited me to be on the ground in November. I've been a keynote speaker over in Athens, and I brought Archie, just like this, and my character Scarlet, right up to the Acropolis. So I was looking forward to going back there, but Fred has been able to provide me a wonderful platform through the Diana Awards, and I will be grateful to be with them again. So thank you. And again, think about contacting your local comic book stores and sending a comic book to someone to put a smile on their face and letting them know you do care for them. It can be a lot, or inviting them to connect to the library that has Hoopla and introducing them to reading comic books online, because comic books do let you get lost in fantasy, and we need that downtime. Tufts University does say that, recharging your batteries is important, and get lost in reading comic books.